Good morning, everybody. It is great to be with you. My name is Corey. I'm with Sigmund Software, as Doug mentioned. The good news is I'm not really going to be talking about software, technology, or even AI, which might get me out of here. But again, it's great to be with you. And what I'd like to start with is this is my 22nd year with Sigmund. And prior to working with Sigmund, I was an administrator of a subacute, post-acute dual diagnosis facility in upstate New York. And I had the luxury of learning a lot about the treatment process, the human experience, and really what our roles are as caregivers, techs, clinicians, and executives. So I'm going to start with something that a very smart psychologist taught me. So it's a simple question of, what's it like to be you? Like, what's it like to be you every day? And have you ever asked yourself that question? Have you ever asked somebody else that question? What's it like to be a patient in your program? We must actively seek out that information about the clients we serve, what it's like to be them. What was it like yesterday, the day before, during detox, in residential, returning home? Self-reporting and assessment are critical to the process, but why are so many organizations underutilizing the most obvious tools? The most valuable data does not come from technology. It comes from people who notice things. Noticing is the foundation of trauma-informed care, person-centered care, and effective treatment of substance use disorders. And yet, in most programs, observational data is the least captured, the least cultivated, and the least translated into action. My goal today in this 90-minute presentation, kidding, I know it's 10. Doug. My goal is to discuss the need for a culture of observation and human noticing, and how it can improve outcomes and increase engagement. A culture of noticing is where all staff within the organization, not just clinicians, all staff within the organization are working to understand that vital question. What's it like to be a patient in your program? Yesterday, today, tomorrow. This comes not only from asking clients through daily interaction and assessment tools, but observing and noticing over time. The behavioral health and SUD treatment populations are dynamic. Symptoms shift, motivation fluctuates. Small cues often precede major clinical events. A client sitting close to the exit, someone who's normally punctual showing up late consistently, someone who typically makes eye contact is now avoiding, and something that should be more obvious but oftentimes is not, someone's not talking about their support network. None of these show up in standardized assessments, none. Yet each can predict risk, escalation, disengagement, or relapse. We're all familiar with our structured tools like ASAM, GAD-7, PHQ-9, BAM, and more. These are important instruments that capture only a fraction of the real picture. The most predictive data points in addiction treatment are often human observations made before a crisis. As an industry, we cannot improve outcomes if we overlook the information that comes before the numbers. So I'll say that again because I work nationally, internationally with treatment centers for the past 20 plus years. There's a rush to interpretation before observation. I think rush to interpretation increases stigma. We want to create a culture of observation within the entire organization. So we cannot improve outcomes if we overlook the information that comes before the numbers. What we miss when we don't notice, a client relapse was preceded by 2 weeks of sitting closer to the door. Anxiety and ambivalence masked as a simple seating preference. A client left treatment prematurely after 3 days of flat affect, which many of us know is a sign of depression, that was not captured on his PHQ-9 score because his score remained unchanged. because the PHQ-9 provides a baseline, not how the client's necessarily responding to the treatment process. These are not, in my opinion, these are not failures in compassion or skill. I've dedicated my entire career to working in behavioral health and human services. It's the best group of people. It's the best group of people. And I've said for 20 years that you all make a living giving people second, third, and fourth chances. What better group to be around? So these are not failures in compassion or skill. These are industry-specific human systems problems. There's a failure in observation culture. There's no shared expectation that noticing matters. So why? There's no mechanism to capture these small data points, and most importantly, as a former trainer, no feedback loop to learn, act, and evolve. Observation is the oldest form of data collection we have. Long before we ran statistical models or predictive dashboards, we had clinicians, patients, and researchers carefully watching and tracking efficacy. Data does not always start on a spreadsheet. It starts with human beings paying attention to acknowledge the benefit enough to slow down and notice a pattern, a behavior, or a cue. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in science and medicine and social change began with one person observing something that others overlooked. Isaac Newton with the apple, gravity, right? Something that no one else did prior. The individual who found penicillin, right? Just was observant of the way things were relating and behaving. One of the most critical advancements in our time. But the same principle drives scientific discovery today. When a pattern's noticed, recorded, and tested, it becomes evidence. When that evidence guides how we act, it becomes an intervention. I think we all in this room could agree that SUD and behavioral health treatment outcomes would be vastly improved with more practices based on evidence. It begins with noticing. Simple. The cost of misnoticing in our field is high. We missed opportunities for early intervention, increased relapse rates, disengagement from treatment, and unfortunate overdoses. And there's neuroscience why this works, because it works. The brain detects patterns before the conscious mind does. What staff notice is often early pattern recognition, pre-conscious clinical intelligence, not coming from technology. Watching is passive. Noticing is active. As a tech staff, somebody running groups, shuttling during meds, I'm not watching, I'm noticing. This is what I'm here to do. What is the client doing versus what is the client doing compared to their baseline? This is where the PHQ-9, those standard instruments, create that baseline. But if we are not systematically tracking information over time to see how the patient is responding to an external factor, a treatment intervention, medication, roommate change. Observation as a clinical skill and not a soft intuition, okay? People can learn to become observers. It's not just a skill. This is something that can be trained and cultivated. Beyond that, there's strong research in micro-expressions, body positioning, speech, eye movements. There's wearables and apps that tech is there. But we're still not relying on humans to notice. So I want to create a culture of noticing, to create the next generation of clinicians, the next generation of treatment executives to take us where we need to go. In order to establish a culture of noticing, you need to have three things. You need shared language, you need shared habits, and you need shared systems. Shared language is things like change in baseline behavior, engagement and participation levels, observed versus verbalized behaviors. When we name an observation, we can talk about it. And when we talk about it, we can act on it, and we can improve an outcome. Shared habit, probably one of the harder things to instill, is that observation becomes culture when it becomes routine. What about requiring a minimum set of observational data in weekly, daily even, summaries, documents? Transition shift notes. I used to work nights and do the shift notes on the recording on the phone, old school, Nextels. And we didn't always talk about the squeaky wheel. Who was the loudest? Who wanted the phone calls? Who was causing trouble? We want to change the culture to talking about subtle changes in clients and not just incidents. We must begin to ask, what did we notice from the client that we're not seeing in the chart? These are important questions to ask ourselves. These habits create continuous stream of high value, human-generated data. And, clinicians, I'm speaking for myself, we're creatures of habit. We can walk around in an uncomfortable shoe all day. So we don't change because we're told to do more documentation. We change because we feel that our attention makes us better at our craft. And that's exactly what this is. Recognize and highlight staffs whose observations led to improved care plans or caught early subtle risk factors. I know myself, that praise from a manager or somebody I admire would take me to the next level in my career trajectory. Make clinical noticing part of the clinical identity of your treatment program. Everyone is talking about personalized and patient-centered care. Can that be completely true if we're not tracking and measuring against a baseline? So how personalized can we get? I think we can go farther. I know that clinicians and staff are overloaded, so the incentive is not based on quantity of work, but impact. Some of the best clinicians I've ever met may not have been the best at documentation, but they were incredible observers and just flat out noticed more than anybody in the room. And when our systems reward noticing, not just documenting, we elevate the entire standard of care. Shared systems. The industry is transitioning away from narrative-based documentation. Tools exist today, Sigmund Software and others. Tools exist today to simplify data collection and allow for the capture of micro-observations. Observations of isolation, avoidance, increased hopelessness, speech variables all lend to trend lines, early alerts, and context for outcomes, relational insight, and even predictive signals. In addition to patient-reported information, when staff record nuanced observations, they're contributing to a living evidence base. It's empowering. I'm going to say that again because I've lived that. When staff record nuanced observations, they're contributing to a living evidence base. And it is empowering and developmental. And that living evidence base is the industry, not just the facility. Humanized data collection means we observe before we measure. We observe before we interpret. Interpretation reinforces stigma. What are we seeing? What matters to the person? Context with numbers. A score is meaningless without any story behind it. An individual checking they're a veteran, an individual checking that they recently overdosed or had thoughts of suicidality. Yes, they satisfy our documentation requirements, but does it tell us anything about the individual, what they're going through, and how they're responding to treatment? Feedback loops. As a former trainer, we work on inter-rater reliability. We make sure that everybody is on the same page, everybody's communicating that shared language. And from an inter-rater reliability, what you're seeing and what I'm seeing and what you're seeing is at least 85% accurate, so that our clinicians can look at information and make informed decisions. So feedback loops. Data should inform real-time decisions, not just sit in a report. That's how we turn observation into continuous learning for both clients and clinicians. Technology supports but does not replace human noticing. I'm advocating that we take a deceptively simple approach to transforming our industry. the skill of noticing, the discipline of documenting, and the culture of sharing observations are the foundation for building the next evidence-based treatments for our client population. Our clients give us signals. Our responsibility is to see them, our systems must honor them, and our culture must act on them. In our work, we have an opportunity every single day to notice something that could change a client's trajectory. Don't hesitate to do that and pass it on to your peers. Thank you very much.